Welcome back to the Source Garage. This is the updated CycloShine Pro wheel detailing stand assembly video. And this is, I think, the third time I'll be uploading this now because I've gotten some more feedback and I've added a few components to the build here. So I'm going to be going over some additions to the assembly process to help fix a couple of things I've gotten some feedback on. Nothing drastically that changes how the stand functions, but just some updates. And a couple of, I guess I'll call them variations that people have sent me emails about, and I've responded with some things they can change around to help them get a bit more functionality out of the stand. So if you've seen it before, then you don't really need to watch the whole build video. I have, like I said, a couple extra things I've added, but there is some, I'll give some tips and tricks, so to speak, through this assembly process on some things I've figured out and gotten some feedback on people from. But if you're new here, thanks for buying a stand, and hope this video is helpful to you. So I'll bring the camera in and get started. All right, so to get started here, you should have gotten an instruction sheet of some kind in your package. And so I'm real quick going to go over all the parts that you should have here and the tools that you actually need to assemble this. So going on the parts list, we got your 1/4 inch by 1.5 inch bolts, 2.5 inch by 1/4 inch bolts, you got your 1/4 inch nuts, your 1/4 inch washers, M10 40mm bolts. So these large bolts are what you can use in place of casters if you just want to set the frame just like on a table and not use the casters. However, it will make using the toggle clamp definitely harder, but you still can use it. The M10 washers, the M10 acorn cap nuts here that go on top of the casters. Got the toggle clamp assembly, which comes with this extra part you don't need, which I'll go over. The hinge for the back of the frame, the roller brackets. So these 6 brackets, they're all identical, so don't worry about where you put them. We will talk about the orientation of where to put them. The 4 casters, you get 4 of these plastic end caps here. The M8 x 100mm bolt, which we're going to put on the toggle clamp here. And then the urethane cap, which we'll put on the end of this bolt on the toggle clamp assembly. Then you should have 6 frame parts, so the long back assembly piece, the 2 side pieces, the back and front part of the base, and then the top handle. Now these you can already see, the first step that I would recommend doing is putting in these end caps. So on the back frame and the short top handle here, you get 4 of these end caps that you can just hit in with this mallet here, which is why I have that. So I'd recommend starting off with just hitting in those 4 pieces there, get that out of the way. So let me clear all this stuff out of the way and we'll start with the assembly of the base. All right, so we're gonna start with assembling the base here. So this is the rear piece. You can tell by all the extra holes in it. So the way I'm gonna assemble this is I'm gonna have this be the front here, and I'm gonna have this be the rear, and this will be my 2 side pieces here, just so I can give you kind of a frame of reference here. So make sure these bolt holes on top of the front piece are on the outside of the frame because the brackets mount like so. So make sure, again, these tiny holes are on the outside of the frame. And on the rear piece here, what you want to look for to orientate is these back 2 holes that are offset. This is where the toggle clamp mounts onto. So if you take those and put them on the back left side, if I'm looking from the back, from you would be on the right side if you're looking at it from the front. Put these on the back, and then make sure these bolt holes here are also on the back again. So I need to flip this over, let's see, like that. So now I've got the back hole, the top holes are on the back outside of the frame, and I've got the 2 smaller hole, or 2 holes that are on the back side here on my left, or might be your right. So that's the orientation, and these side pieces just mount right on top here. All right, so now to get started, the way I do this is, so take one of your casters. One of the things I've added is an extra 10mm washer to put on the bottom now. I used to just have one on the top. I've added one to the bottom so you can tighten down the frame more. This washer will obviously help disperse the pressure. So let's start with the front here. Gonna feed the caster through, put the top frame on, put another 10mm washer on here, and then one of the caps. All right, so now I would just hand tighten these to start with and we can square it up. So now you can see there's one whole piece. So cap, washer, washer, caster. And I'd recommend, and if you need help with the casters like spinning on you once you start assembling this, you can take this, which is the lock, and press that down and they won't swivel on you anymore. So you can grab hold of them when you need to tighten down on them, just so you know that. All right, so now let's go ahead and do the other ones. Caster, washer, through the frame, another washer, acorn cap, and same for the back. Now that we've got a solid front here, it becomes a little easier. So washer, washer, cap, all right, so now you have the frame all put together. And the next thing I was gonna tell you, to tighten these down, 17mm socket. So 17mm fits on these for tightening them. Now, like I said, I put the washer on here so you can crank down harder if you need to. I've gotten some feedback that on the glossier frames, so like the gray, the blue, and the red, that sometimes the frame will come out a square if these aren't tightened down enough. And if you tighten them down really hard, you may warp the frame. This is only 1/16 inch thick aluminum on the square tubing. The sides are 1/8, but that's why there's an extra wash there now, so you can really tighten it down if you need to. And again, that's a 17mm. But for now, I'm just gonna hand tighten these and I'll put the frame together. So next what I'd recommend doing is putting on the toggle clamp. Will be easiest to do now before we put on these brackets. So when you get the toggle clamp in the package, you'll have this extra piece, which I put on backwards here. But you're gonna disassemble this, just unscrew it. You have to take all the parts off of it here. So now we're gonna replace this with a 100mm bolt and our own cap. Now this part is where you can kind of be subjective to your own preference when using the stand, because so the toggle clamp, when it mounts to the frame, has a range of motion, right, that the arm swings in, and depending upon the exact way you mount it and exactly how frame your square is here, 1/16 of an inch can make a difference. So one thing I've changed now in the kit is I've added 2 washers that you can replace one of these nuts with when assembling this if you want to vary essentially the length that this sticks through here and locks in place. So you can play around with a combination of the nuts and the washers on here to adjust how far this is going to stick out. So just a piece of information. So for this example, what I'm going to do is use 2 washers, then one of the flat pieces, make sure it's hooked outwards, it hooks around the frame here. So now you stick it through the back of the frame, like so. Put on the other flat piece again. It should clamp around the frame, like that. And then I'll put the front nut on, and this is what we would tighten down to actually hold it in place. All right, so now that I've got all this together, you can see that these washers here could be replaced with this nut and it'll stick out a little bit further, or actually it would take it back. Or you can put the nut on with a washer and it will hold it back even further, or you can take the washers off and then the bolt will stick out further this way. So you can play around with it to make it fit whatever you want exactly. All right, so now it's time to mount it. So we're going to use these two bottom holes. Oh, sorry, forgot you could screw, this is threaded, screws onto the end here. These two bottom holes on the toggle clamp are going to mount into the holes on the back here, these two. So take your two 1.5 inch long, 1/4 inch bolts, stick them through the frame. And then what we're going to do to help angle this into where the roller is we're going to take our washers. The way I've done this is put 3 on this side, towards the outside of the frame, 1 on the other. You could also possibly put a 4th on here. Actually, let's go ahead and put 4 on here. 4 on here, 1 on here. Mount that on there like so. And then nuts on here to tighten down. And this is 7/16. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is definitely hard to get to. To get a socket on here. There just went my other one. So it may take a little bit of finessing to get it tightened down. So now we have our toggle clamp mounted. Now let me tighten this. That's why I have the pliers here to tighten this down. Obviously you can use a wrench. So now that's pretty tight. All right, now let's put the brackets on. Gotta grab my washer or my socket that ran away. So you have 4 brackets. They mount 1 on each corner of the frame. Again, make sure your bolt holes are all on the outside. Bolt goes through the top. Washer nut on the bottom. I'll come back and tighten those up later. Oh wait, that was the 8mm nut off the toggle clamp. Don't use that. Now definitely make sure these are square flush with the frame here. If you tighten them crooked, you're at more of a risk for the rollers falling out. Nut and washer again. All right, so now that I've got all those on, I'm gonna tighten them down real quick. Again, make sure you keep them straight. If you have a second 7/16, it's helpful sometimes if they're sliding around on you. Just making sure they're straight enough here. All right, look good enough. So again, you want your frame to be as square as possible. Make sure you tighten down all these corners. If it's not square, you're risking the rollers falling out and doing damage to whatever you're working on. Last thing we'll do on the bottom here is the hinge that goes right on the back here. So take 2 of your 1.5 inch, 1/4 inch bolts. You just wiggle them into place. And then washer and nut on the bottom again. And tighten down. All right, so now there's a tiny bit of play in this hinge, but you're really not going to notice it that much once we get the back mounted on here. So this is our completed base. So I'm going to set this aside and we'll work on the back mount. All right, so on the back here, you should have already hit in these ends, or if you haven't, do so now with a mallet. And I'll talk about the hole orientation here to make sure you line everything up properly. So the end with the 3 holes here, so these 1, 2, and this 3 are what go to the base of the frame. So this is the bottom. So that hinge is going to attach right here. And then this is where the long bolt goes through this and the frame if you want to fold it and collapse it down. This is the lower mounting bracket holes right here. And then on the top here where you see these diagonal offset holes, we have the handle and the top bracket. So first thing I'm going to do is mount this middle bracket. And it goes like this. So the only one hole should be sticking out. Make sure you see this. Because if you try and mount it like this, you may end up scratching a rim or whatever you're working on with this sticking out too far. Now you can do this if you still put the roller here and you just want the roller parallel or directly perpendicular to the ground and not on an angle. What I found best though is mounting it like this. That way you can angle the roller and it prevents the rim from ever hitting the roller and possibly taking the paint off of either of them. So 2 holes to the frame, 1 sticking out. And then same bolt. And then nut and washer on the back. And then for the top one, now this one we are going to stick out using the 1 hole and then sticking it out so that the 2 holes, you can see here, stick out. And we'll put the roller in the furthest one. And once I get this on here, I'll talk about how you can vary this some more. Oops. I just realized I didn't mess that up. I got ahead of myself. Put this so it's on the bottom, not on the top. Bottom. The top is for the modification I'm going to go over here in a second. So the bottom from here to here is 12 inches for the roller to sit in. All right, so the modification I was talking about, I kind of got ahead of myself here. If you have an especially tall tire, so this, I can use a 37-inch tire on this. If you want to go up to 39, maybe even 40 inches, you need to raise the height of the roller if you want it to contact, if you want the roller to contact the tire still. So what you can do is take this and basically shift them up the frame. And the way you do that is you could take this lower hole and move it up to here so that you're not even using this bolt. You just have one bolt holding this frame in, or this bracket in here. And then with the top one here, like I just showed before, you can swivel it around to add a bit more distance here as well, or mount it with one of these two holes here so it's up also. So that's a way you can add more distance up this way. Now it may interfere with the T-handle on the top here, you may have to take that off. But if you did it like this and move this bracket up, you could get yourself a couple more inches of use out of it for an especially large tire. But the standard way of using it is like so. So both brackets are facing towards each other. All right, now for the T-handle on top, just line up the orientation to the holes on the frame. And these are 2.5-inch bolts now. And we're going to use a washer and a nut. Tighten all this down. All right, so now we have a completed top, or I guess entire back bracket here. So now we're going to mount it with these holes here. So bringing the frame back in, I'll try and make sure I can angle this so I can show you this properly. So these holes line up with the bracket right here. So you need to take last two 1.5-inch, 1/4-inch bolts, line them up through the frame, like so. And then washer and nut on the back side. I'll tighten these up real quick. All right, so now there shouldn't be a whole lot of wiggle. There's a little bit of play in the back here still, but not much. Now, your last 2.5-inch bolt here goes through this hole in the front into the frame in the back if you want to lock it in the upright position when you're using it. If you take this out, you can fold the whole frame, the whole back part of the frame down so you can collapse it for easier storage and putting it away. But since we're going to be using it here. Oh, and one other thing I would comment about is the hole on the back here on the frames you have now. I've decided to slot this out. This was an older, one of the first round of frames that this hole was the original size. I've slotted this out now because the tolerance on these brackets that are on the back here is not as good as I would like it to be. So this is going to be slotted, and you'll see that on the frame you get, so it helps make putting the bolt in easier because I'm probably going to have a difficult time here. All right, so once you got this through the bottom of the frame here, just a washer and nut on the back again. then tighten in place. There you go. Now you have a finished stand. So let me grab some rollers real quick and I'll show you how to throw those in here. So the base roller here, I'll just show you, this is the larger roller, is about 1.9 inches in diameter. So it should be 13 inches from end to end here and sit in here obviously. Now one end will not compress if you push on it and one end will go in. They're spring loaded, right? So the way I'd advise you to put these in here to help make sure they never fall out is the end that will compress in go on the front of the stand. So this end you can pull out, put it in the bottom hole on the back bracket, pull it, and then stick it through the frame here. And then once it's in, pull on the front, and now it can bounce back and forth in here, and it will not fall out if it stays like this. And now I'll show you, talking about the toggle clamp so much earlier here. Let me see if I can zoom the camera in a bit. So with the toggle clamp here, like that. So now we've put some friction on here. And you can adjust it, like I said, with the back here, the washers or the nut, to get it to where it's exactly the amount of pressure you want on here. Some people just want a light amount of friction that makes it a little bit more difficult to roll. Others want to like lock it in. The thing I'd advise you to make sure you don't do is put so much pressure that this on the front here, you can already see, starts bending out a little bit. You don't want to crank on it so hard that you're permanently bending the front here. So just enough pressure to help stop this from spinning so freely is all you need. Because when a full-size tire is on here, this isn't going to be rotating super easy still. It's going to have a little bit of friction to it, so you don't need to worry about the tire just constantly rolling away like this. It's not going to happen, and you'll see that once you get the tire on there. But if your roller does slide all the way to the back like this, you're going to have a problem getting the toggle clamp to connect. So if a tire is on here, you can literally just take your hand, grab the tire, and pull it, and it'll slide the roller forward, and then you can activate the toggle clamp. So just some tips on how to operate this setup and make it work best for you. Again, most people don't even need the toggle clamp necessarily because of how much friction is already there. But when you do some intense scrubbing or polishing of some kind and want to lock it in place, that's what this is there for, so you can prevent it from moving. So just so you know, and again, this is going to be very hard to operate if you don't have the casters. You still can, I've done it, and I would flip these acorn nuts to the bottom so that way you get a little bit more ground clearance, or put some wood blocks under the sides and raise it up off the ground or off the table you're using. So that would be my advice if you're going to try and use it without the casters, just on the table by itself. So let me put in the other roller here. Again, this side compresses. So I want this side to go in the lower roller, pull it, put it in the top hole here, and now they're on an angle, as you can see, so the tire will lean back. So let me readjust the camera here and I'll show you the top one. So with the top roller, obviously this one's smaller, but again, I want you to notice the side that compresses and the side that pulls out. Recommend the side that pulls out, putting in the top outside hole, pull it up, then you can line it up with the bottom hole and drop it right in. There you go. So now you've got all three of your rollers in. So unlock the casters here. Now I can wheel it around and then lock the casters back in place. So next, I'm going to throw a tire on it real quick just so you can see it in action. I can show you the toggle clamp again. All right, so I'm going to roll out the spare tire off my truck here. So this is a 37-inch tire in diameter. Obviously, you can see how big it is in relation to the stand here. So I'm going to throw this on here. There we go. So now, obviously, very easy to roll. And let me unlock the casters here, and I'll swivel it around for you so you can see all around it. So, ta-da, roll around, no problems. Now the casters are pretty tiny, so I'd watch out if you're going over any big cracks in the floor or something like that. I want to show you again on the back here. You can see how much the roller is contacting just the top of the tire here. So if you want to go larger, you may need to, like I talked about, raising the brackets up, but hopefully you can see that where it's still contacting the top here and how much that angle of the roller helps. Now the toggle clamp, again, like I said, you can see on camera here, and actually let me zoom in to make sure I can show you this. Angle the camera down here. So you can see that the roller has come back against the frame. And if I just push the tire, look at that. Space, now I can lock it in place. Now it's not moving as freely. So as simple as that, when you want to activate the toggle clamp, release the toggle clamp, and if it comes down, not a problem. See how easy that is to move? So, ta-da. That's really it. So, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. This is the CycloShine Pro wheel detailing stand in its entirety. So, hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, any comments, concerns, suggestions, just let me know. Email thesourcegarage@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.